Hey everybody, and welcome back to Storytime with JRP. We're continuing our book, Laurence Grey, Secret of the Lost Roanoke Colony, and we're currently in chapter 48. So if you're just joining us, head back to chapter 1 so you don't miss any crucial details. Once again, you may notice I'm wearing casual clothes, and that's just because it gets hotter and hotter as we're getting closer to summer. So I apologize for that, but I still got the hat. So let's get into the book, but first we'll give you a quick recap. So, where we last left off, Laurence Grey and the gang just discovered the treasured Roanoke colony, and they discovered what lay there for them. If they were good explorers, they'd have access to a treasure that was just crazy, a huge amount of wealth. Or if they were bad explorers, a big shed of weapons opened that the settlers used to attack them. And of course, because evil General Sheldon was there, that was the shed that opened. And so now they're running for their life as an evil horde of people with futuristic guns are running after them. So that's what we're continuing now in chapter 8, titled Roanoke Unleashed. That's chapter 48, actually. General Phil Sheldon, aka Philip Swanson, was silenced by the foreboding warning spoken by the mysterious device. It distracted Laurence Grey as well, who was infuriated that Sheldon would break their deal about Grey's son Jason, find Roanoke, and his son would be spared. Sheldon broke the silence first. "What does this mean?" "The aliens promised a huge reward to anyone who finds Roanoke." "No," corrected Grey. "They said any honest explorer who finds Roanoke. A person whose only goal is to learn more about the world around him, not just out for fortune and glory, which you, General, were clearly hoping for." Sheldon snorted. "So I don't get a reward. I still found the colony, and that alone is an accomplishment." "Perhaps," replied Grey, "if that were really what you were after. I was the one who discovered all those clues. Without me, you'd be nothing." Sheldon cracked a smug smile. "And without Jason, you'd be nothing, Laurence Grey." Fuming, Grey tackled Sheldon to the ground. He was again about to punch General Sheldon when a hand rested on his shoulder. It was the assassin. "We don't really have time for that, Laurence," it said. "We really should escape while we can." Again, Grey noticed that feminine voice. It sounded so familiar, but he just couldn't place it. Grey got up and helped Sheldon get up as well. "Just remember who you're talking to, General." Sheldon ignored him. Suddenly, the device turned on again and said, 2 minutes, dishonest travelers, until Roanoke is unleashed." It then promptly shut off again. Sheldon scratched his chin. "I don't get it. What does this device mean, saying there will be a huge war or something? Is that a metaphor?" Grey shook his head. "No, it's an understatement. You remember I told you about the alternate reality version of our son, right? Well, he invented a device that can take him to other alternate realities, as if you didn't know." Sheldon gave him a death look. Grey continued, "Well, that version of Jason told me about one of the realities he visited. It was a version in which you found Roanoke much earlier, hence Jason was able to see the consequences. It really was World War III, 2/3 of the Earth uninhabitable due to radiation from nuclear bombs. Luckily, Jason landed in a part that he could breathe in." Sheldon was dumbfounded. "Are you trying to tell me a city of under 1,000 people are going to attack the entire world?" "More than that, General," gravely replied Grey. "Destroy it, if we don't stop them. My travels give me the conclusion that the colonists, which are descendants of master criminals, will be heavily armed. That will be the driving force of their takeover. In fact, the arsenal is most likely held in one of these 2 sheds." "Alien weapons?" asked Sheldon. Grey nodded. "That's right. Enjoy your life while you have it, General. You may not have it long. And all because you were hoping to get rich off this. Now look what we've done." Sheldon looked down on the ground. "Perhaps I made a mistake," Grey huffed. "Well, it's about time you came to that conclusion." Sheldon turned on Grey. "My mistake was picking you as the chosen descendant. I could have picked anyone else, but I had to go and pick you." Then the mysterious device turned on again. 1 minute until advanced firearms are released to Roanoke. Dishonest travelers are advised to take cover." Grey looked around. "We need to find a way back up. We can't go the way we came." The assassin pointed to a pathway a quarter-mile away. "There's an exit. It looks like it's obstructed by boulders, though. We'll have to find some way to move them." Grey squinted into the distance. "Looks like pretty big rocks. Maybe there'll be something over there that can help us lift them." Sheldon began walking. "Well, then let's start heading over there already." The trio began their short pilgrimage to the other side of the subterranean colony. They were no more than a few feet from the blocked exit when a loud siren blasted a short screech. The device they were once standing in front of suddenly rang a voice out through a loudspeaker. Citizens of Roanoke, your time has finally come to become the superior beings of the earth. From a distance, Gray could see one of the large sheds opening. It was bigger than he thought, and even from this distance, he could see that it was utterly packed to the brim with alien guns, sword-like objects, and even a few vehicles which resembled tanks. The device turned on once more. Citizens, put into your possession one of these weapons or vehicles. The shed has 9 basements, so make sure you leave no resource behind. A lifting machine can help you bring those objects from the lower levels to the ground level. When you have gathered and fully stocked yourselves with the appropriate weapons, proceed to the northwest corner of the colony and walk or drive out of the exit. If you do not know how to drive, read the manual inside each vehicle. Hurry, our invasion begins in 5 minutes. Your mayor will be your leader. Kill everyone you see unless they join your cause. Get somebody to take you or some of you to the nation's capital and take over his position. Any resistance, use these weapons. Battle plans can be found on basement level 9. This message will repeat. Citizens, put into your possession. Gray turned away. This was all too real. There would be no walking away from this and returning to his home. Even if Sheldon let him go, it would just be avoiding the inevitable. He might as well stay and fight for his country. Suddenly, all the rocks that blocked their exit fell away, leading to a spiraling ramp, going up, big enough for a tank to fit through. Without delay, the assassin, Sheldon, and Gray began the journey up, running as fast as they could. After just a few minutes, Gray could tell they were nearing the surface. He could hear the device from below. Citizens, the time to attack is now. Hold nothing back. Roanoke is unleashed. After just a few more turns on the ramp, the trio reached the surface. Just as Gray stopped for a moment to bask in the sunlight which he so missed, a sizable explosion went off behind them and launched him off his feet. He landed hard on the middle of the street. A large truck skidded hard to avoid Gray, which caused it to hit a store on the other side of the street, creating a massive explosion because it was a gas truck. Dazed, Gray managed to stand up and look back at the rear of the library. The hole they had came out of seemed to have just been created. There was no perfect square exit, just a ragged circle that looked like someone had randomly decided to dig a hole in the ground. Sheldon and the assassin rushed over to help Gray back to the sidewalk. We got to get out of here, Laurence. Oh, no, wrong voice. We got to get out of here, Laurence, said the assassin. I'll stay behind and hold them off, and you and Sheldon get as far away from here as you can. Sheldon shook his head. No, you shouldn't. Oh, gosh, I keep getting the voices mixed up, sorry. Sheldon shook his head. No, not my subordinate. You leave with Gray. I will stay. The assassin turned around sharply. Never! I must always protect my superiors. It is always— Enough, assassin, spat Sheldon. That is an order. Now, my second order is that you leave immediately. But, General— Now! The assassin looked around and looked down. As you wish, General. Gray stepped up to Sheldon. I wish I could say it's been fun, General, but to be quite honest, I'm kind of glad you're staying behind. I don't blame you, Gray, conceded Sheldon, but my end is just the beginning. You'll have to find a way to end this colonist threat, and chances of that are nil. Gray steeled his face. You were the cause of World War III and Earth's near total destruction in another reality. I will not let that happen in this one. With that, Gray swiveled on his heels and started to walk down the sidewalk. Hesitantly, the assassin followed. With Gray and the assassin were out of sight, Sheldon emerged to face the oncoming of well-armed, half-crazed colonists. The first wave of them blasted their alien ray guns at the figure of Sheldon, but all of their beams bounced off Sheldon harmlessly because he had enabled his force field. People, calm down, Sheldon said. I'm the guy who escaped the original captives, Philip Swanson. Use your DNA scanner. I'll prove my identity. One of the colonists got out a scanner, and after a moment nodded to another. The other stepped up to Sheldon. Sir Swanson, being that you possess the ability to escape those captors so long ago, and because you somehow are still alive, I grant you the power over our whole army, making you our commander-in-chief. I accept, grinned Sheldon evilly. And as my first act of commander-in-chief, I crown myself Emperor Swanson the First. The colonist nodded. Your second order, sir? Sheldon, now being called by his original name, Swanson, said, World domination. We'll start with Huntington Beach since we're here. Everyone follow me. We're headed to the mayor's office. Grey and the assassin quickly got to the airport. We'll need to get to Washington, said Grey. We'll need to speak to the very top if any major action is to happen. You mean the president? Asked the assassin incredulously. Grey nodded. That's right. And with the White House security these days, I won't even need a pass card. Minutes later, they jumped onto the first plane to Washington. After 5 hours of waiting, the 6 other assassins that had gone with Sheldon to the Huntington Library were still in the same area where they had disappeared. They all ran outside, however, when they heard a ruckus. It was Sheldon and an army of people with guns that looked like they were from the 1700s. Sheldon saw them. Hey, everyone. How would you like to be my new top officers? I'm taking over the world. Join the party. Without hesitation, the 6 assassins joined the endless ranks of the huge army. Grey and the remaining assassin landed in Washington, D.C., and went straight to the White House. As expected, there was zero security, and the 3-foot fences were easy to hop over, so they just walked inside with ease. They got all the way to the doors of the Oval Office before someone finally realized they were in there. What the heck are you two doing in here? Asked an agent, FBI apparently. Oh, Laurence Grey, what are you doing here? Where's Sheldon? It was Agent Keeler. Grey stepped up. Glad you're here, Keeler. We need to inform the president of something immediately. Keeler responded, saying, Well, actually, but the assassin just pushed him into a wall, and the assassin in Grey walked in. But it was not the president sitting at the desk. It was General Farragut, their original captor. Grey, how did you escape the FBI? I didn't escape, Grey said. I completed the deal. I found Roanoke. Yes, I know, said Farragut. That's why the president's gone. He's gone to Area 51 to formulate a battle plan against this new army of Roanokeans. Grey raised his eyebrow. Roanokeans? Farragut shrugged. That's what we're calling them for now. They took over Huntington Beach, Grey. And the worst part of it is that for some insane reason, they've adopted Sheldon as their leader. Grey's face went white. Oh no, they realized who he was. Grey had no idea what to do next. Come with me, Grey, began General Farragut. We're headed back to Area 51. You can give the president advice on a battle plan, since you have valuable information on Roanoke. Suddenly, Grey dropped his water cup, glass shattering across the floor. Jason, he's still there? Who? Asked Farragut. Grey grabbed the general's shoulders. My son! Sheldon had him locked in an airlock in Area 51 and threatened to have all the air taken out if I couldn't find Roanoke in time. Oh no! Grey fell to the floor, sobbing. Farragut and the assassin ran to his side. Grey, what is it? Prodded Farragut. Grey sobbed all the more. Sheldon only gave me 1 hour until... And then he broke out into another round of tears. Farragut patted his shoulder. So called him up, Grey. Don't you have any time left in Sheldon's ultimatum? Grey looked at Farragut, stricken. It ended 4 hours ago. Grey howled in sadness. How could I forget my own son? The assassin stood up and walked over to the Oval Office phone. I'll call them. After a moment of silence, she said, Give me Area 51, please. This is Assassin 06, clearance Alpha Beta Sheldon 126. Thank you. After a moment of silence, and then whoever was on the line picked up. The assassin spoke. Yes, this is Assassin 06. Give me the status of prisoner Jason Grey. Really? You're positive? All right, we'll be there. Grey looked up expectantly. Well, my son? The assassin shook her head. They didn't tell me anything. They just said to come on down, so they can explain the situation. That works out just fine, since you're supposed to talk to the president there anyway. Grey jumped up. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go! So General Farragut, Agent Keeler, Laurence Grey, and the assassin hopped on the first plane to Las Vegas, and then they took a long ride in a black van to Area 51. Despite Grey's involvement in the situation, he was still required to be blindfolded on the whole van trip, so he wouldn't know exactly where Area 51 was. After a 3-hour drive, they finally arrived. They briskly walked into the War Strategy Room, where President Terry Ford was stooping was stooping down to look at some battle plan readouts. He was surrounded by multiple Secret Service strategists, high-ranking officers, and others. The war strategy room was in high gear. President Terry saw Grey and walked over to him, giving Grey a firm handshake. Laurence Grey, just the man I wanted to see. If you take a look at these readouts, sir, interrupted Grey, I hate to interrupt, but I must know about my son. Terry raised an eyebrow. Your son? Well, as far as I know, he's been treated quite well. Apparently Sheldon was just bluffing about the whole thing. In fact, here's your son now. Grey turned around and saw Jason for the first time in over a month. Without a word, he ran to him and fiercely embraced his son. I'm so sorry, Jason, Grey said while half crying. I'm so sorry. Dad, not in front of the president, replied Jason. President Terry chuckled. Grey stood up and looked at the president. I can't believe Sheldon would flat out lie to me. I can, said the assassin. I've known Sheldon for 11 months now, and this is just like him. He'll do anything to get his way. A strategist spoke up. Assassin 06, I need to confirm your identity information with you. Weight 150, height 60, name... No, stop, cried the assassin, but the strategist didn't stop. As I was saying, name Denise Grey. The bustling war strategy room suddenly seemed silenced to Laurence Grey. Did he just hear right? The name of his dead wife, who died over a year ago? The assassin, or Denise, involuntarily looked over to Laurence Grey. Now the room was all the more silent, all the workers watching for the impending confrontation. Finally, Grey broke the silence. Denise? He asked timidly. Is that you? Denise sighed and said, Yes, Laurence, it's me. Oh, honey, exclaimed Grey as he rushed to embrace her. However, he was stopped from the impending embrace by Denise's outstretched hand. That's quite far enough, she said. Let's not make this bigger than it already is. Grey's eyes widened. Bigger than it already is? It's huge! You're alive! Denise rolled her eyes. Of course I'm alive. I was with you practically the whole time as an assassin. Grey was confused. Then why did you not reveal yourself earlier? You don't know how much me and Jason have missed you. Denise shrugged. Well, frankly, I liked the change. Everyone in the room could tell this fight may get worse than the Roanoke Army, so the room quickly emptied of all others besides the Greys. Grey noticed the emptiness of the room, but pressed on. Liked it? Yes, liked it, shot back Denise. You weren't being a good husband, and I just couldn't take it anymore. Being involved with the secret assassins team in the FBI, it was easy to fake my death and start all over. Grey's eyes widened. No wonder they wouldn't let me in the hospital room in your quote-unquote final moments. Then what did I bury? Oh, a wax figure, that's all, replied Denise. I mean, I could divorce you, but how would that look to the FBI? This was my only choice. Grey was flabbergasted. Only choice? How about, coming to me and, I don't know, talk about it? I couldn't, replied Denise, because you were never home. That silenced Grey, and he waited for her to continue. Almost every day you'd work an 8-hour shift at the police department. Then you'd teach a history class at the library for 2 hours, which, mind you, was volunteer work, so no pay at all. Then you'd study on your own for who knows how long. You can't leave at 6 a.m. and get back at midnight. You have no idea how hard it was to raise Jason all by myself. Maybe now you'll have the faintest idea of what a good parent is, now that I'm not there to fix your mistakes. Grey was stunned. She was right, and getting out of this wouldn't be easy. Denise, Just then, alarms and sirens rang everywhere. All at once, all the strategists and military personnel came crashing back in. President Terry rushed to Grey. You'll have to finish your familial battle later, Grey. We have to focus on the real thing. The Roanoke Army has somehow transported themselves to Nevada and are now attempting to break into Area 51. Grey was shocked. Last he heard, the Roanoke Army was in Huntington Beach just an hour ago. How did they get here so fast? He looked to President Terry to respond, but just then the Secret Service was dragging Terry off. Sir, said one agent, we must move you down to the emergency bunker now on sublevel 60 right away. Terry shrugged him off. My dad, Gerald, didn't abandon his country in their time of crisis. Then some agent rolled his eyes. The country really wasn't in a crisis then, sir. Terry stepped closer. Now, you listen here, but Grey cut them off. He's right, Mr. President. You need to get somewhere safe until we can deal with this. Terry hesitated. Well, all right, but I demand that my vice president stays up here in charge. Where is that man?" Just then, Vice President Oki Meyer walked in the room. "Right here, sir. Don't you worry. I got it covered." To prove it, he walked over to the center of the war strategy room. "General Farragut, get a squad of troops in front of every entrance, even the big windows. I want heavy artillery in those large openings, along with the troop squads. And finally, get some people out in the yard to man the tanks before Roanoke gets in. Move!" President Terry nodded in approval and turned to Grey. "Laurence, you've had police experience, right?" Grey nodded. "Only 15 years at the same precinct, sir." Terry, super serious, nodded. "Good. That plus your knowledge of Roanoke, I now draft you and promote you to colonel. You are now the fourth most powerful man in the U.S., behind me, Vice President Meyer, and General Farragut." Grey was stunned. "Sir, I don't deserve that." Terry shook his head. "It's not a reward, Grey. It's a necessity. We need people to listen to your expertise, and they'll listen a lot better if you have rank behind your words. Now, I should be going. Good luck, Colonel Laurence Grey. Do our country proud." Grey saluted. "I will, sir. I won't let you down." Terry grinned. "Let's hope not." And with that, Terry left for the hideaway bunker. Vice President Meyer stepped up to Grey. "He was serious, Grey. You really are the fourth most powerful person in the U.S. That puts you about sixth in the entire world. That means, despite your rank as colonel, you can override any general's orders except Farragut's. I can't say I entirely agree with the president, so you'll have to use those powers wisely. Are you willing to accept the challenge of command? Are you willing to deal with the consequences?" Grey steeled his face. "I am, sir." Meyer nodded. "Good. Now prove it by leading the second wave of troops out to the tanks before Roanoke does." Grey hesitated. "Sir, Meyer cut him off. "If you're not ready, you can go down to the bunker and be a coward, President Terry." No, sir, I'm ready now," responded Grey. He grabbed the nearest AK-47, hoisted it up, and accidentally fired a few rounds, resulting in a few strategists to fall to the ground, holding their feet in agony. Oki Meyer raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps I should have mentioned, Grey. Don't come back if you manage to get your whole squad killed." Grey smiled. "Don't worry, sir. I'll make you proud." With that, he charged to the troop loading dock. Upon there, he assumed command of 30 troops, enough to man 6 tanks. He stood in front of the group, the troops falling into formation. "All right, men," said Grey. "We open the door and charge on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Dad!" Grey turned to see Jason running towards him. Grey sighed. "Son, I'm kind of busy right now." Jason shook his head. "Not enough to let me wish you luck. Do your best, or should I say, do your worst out there." Grey was puzzled. "You sound as if you expect me not to return." "Don't worry, I'll be careful." He turned, but Jason clutched his shoulder. "I already lost you once, Dad. I don't want it to happen again." Grey forced a smile. "I'll only be gone for a few minutes. Hey, why don't you go help Mom with whatever she's doing?" Jason looked bitter. "I can't, Dad. How could she do that to us?" Grey looked down. "Well, I guess it wasn't all her fault, son." You mean what she said about you was true?" questioned Jason. Grey shrugged. "Well, only some of it." Jason waved him off. "Mom's right. You were never there for us." He started to walk away and then looked back. "So I guess we wouldn't notice your absence either." He continued to walk away. Grey cried out, "Jason!" But Jason didn't turn again. He stared at the receding figure of his son. "Sir," a sergeant spoke up, "we need to attack immediately. The Roanoke Colony is about to breach the outer gates." Grey put Jason out of his mind for now and focused on the task at hand. He took the front of his 30-troop army, grabbed his AK-47, and looked out to the Area 51 courtyard. The tanks sat untouched by enemy forces, but the entire complex wall was surrounded by technologically advanced colonists. Grey looked to his company and yelled, "Charge!" The group yelled a war cry and charged out, but mere seconds later, stopped. The Roanoke army had breached the gates and were sprinting towards the entrances with their alien guns. Strangely, they were ignoring the tanks. "Come on!" Grey screamed and jumped into a tank. The rest of the company followed suit, and then nothing happened. A trooper in the tank reported to Grey, "The tank is just off, sir. I can't explain it, but it won't start." Just then, Grey heard a very close explosion. It suddenly dawned on him. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" he screamed to the 5 troops in his tank. Grey then heard another explosion. Finally, getting out of his tank, Grey saw 2 of the other 5 tanks in flames, completely destroyed. Just then, an even bigger explosion went off, and the 3 remaining tanks burst into flames. Grey knew he had mere seconds to save himself. He leapt off his tank, as far as his legs would throttle him, and milliseconds later, his own tank burst into a brilliant explosion. Grey landed hard, but overall was all right. He had lost his entire troop company in mere seconds, just as Vice President Meyer had sarcastically predicted. As Grey looked around the smoldering remains of the tanks, he realized there were no colonists to be seen. They must all be inside, he thought to himself. Then Grey's face turned white. If Roanoke got a hold of the time machine stored in Area 51, they could pause time or do anything else they wished while the world stood still. They were one step away from complete world domination. Colonel Laurence Grey, now alone, raced back into the Area 51 base, where the Roanoke Army had entered just a few minutes ago. Grey reached the war strategy room after a short sprint, and quite a shocking and gruesome scene lay before him. Bodies were strewn around the room, covering every chair, every table, and nearly all the floor space. Grey, in shock, slowly stepped in between the multiple corpses on the way to the next doorway. As he stepped over a few, he stopped and did a double take. Directly below the ground lay General Farragut and Vice President Meyer, their eyes still open, boring straight into Grey's soul. Grey realized with a start that he is now the Vice President of the United States. Normally, a VP would be elected with the President, but with unofficial times, this was war. There wasn't any time for such protocols, and if anyone objected, the order for his promotion was given by the President himself. Grey recovered from his continued shock to take a quick visual survey of the room. He was relieved and worried at the same time when he discovered that his wife and Jason were not among the bodies. He rushed out of the room and into the hallway. He started to hear foreign gunshots, probably Roanoke ray guns. He sprinted down the long hallway, suddenly aware of how integral he now was to the continued existence of Area 51 and the United States. Denise and Jason Grey had come to the same conclusion of Laurence about the Roanoke Army wanting to reach the time machine. The pair ran right by all the security checkpoints, since they were currently unmanned, in light of the ensuing battle. Jason reached the time machine first. "Here, Jason," said Denise, handing her son a machine gun that she had strapped to her leg. "Whoa, Mom, this is going to be fun." Denise got out her own machine gun from another leg and bent down to stare at Jason. "Jason, this is serious. Together, it'll be up to you and me to defend this time machine. I'm sorry you have to be in this situation at such a young age, and sorry for abandoning you. I just couldn't live with your dad anymore. I have to admit it may have been the wrong choice. But right now, we need to face the facts. The Roanoke Army will soon be here, and we're all that's stopping them from what they want. With the time machine, they could take over the world within a few minutes. So whatever happens, do your best, and know that despite the differences between you and me and your dad, I will always love you." Jason looked up to her, struggling to hold in the tears. "I know, Mom." Laurence Grey rushed into the time machine room to find at least 50 Roanokeans firing on Denise and Jason, who were both holding bulletproof shields with their other hand and firing with the other. Grey was frozen. He was unarmed, and if he attempted to save them, it would mean certain death. But his hesitancy cost him. Right in front of his eyes, with no way to stop it, the Roanoke Army gunned down his long-lost wife and his only son. He suddenly felt like his heart had been ripped out of him. He may be next to 50 soldiers, but in reality, he felt truly, utterly alone. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the shocking scene. He couldn't believe it. He had been alongside his wife for months while looking for the colony and didn't even know it. The first and only conversation he'd had with her since her fake death was an argument. An argument! Why couldn't he just agree and let her be right for once? Grey regretted so much that was the last time he spoke to her. And then there was Jason. Grey choked. Just thinking about Jason in the past threatened to bring up tears again. It started with Grey surfing around the internet and stumbling upon the Area 51 site. Then he was forced to continue his search in order to keep the threat of killing Jason at bay. And just 15 minutes after finally reuniting with his son, Grey lost him forever. There wouldn't be another big bluff by General Phil Sheldon that revealed Jason to be alive again. Jason wasn't coming back. Grey was suddenly jerked back to real life when he realized one soldier of the Roanoke Army had his gun trained on Grey. Grey expected to be dead in a few seconds. That makes it all right, he thought. Now I'll be with my wife and son forever. Grey closed his eyes and waited, but the bullets never came. Grey opened his eyes to see that someone had grabbed the gun out of the soldier's hands. It was General Phil Sheldon, a.k.a. Philip Swanson. You don't need to shoot him, my friend, Phil chuckled, looking down at the prone body of Jason. I think this is far worse punishment. Grey was furious, but when he stepped forward, the soldiers brought their guns up again. It was nice working with you, Grey, said Sheldon, but in a few minutes, using the time machine's time-stopping ability, we will have taken over the world, and there's nothing you can do about it. You thought I was after riches when we searched the colony, but this was my goal all along. Enjoy the next few minutes as a free man, because in a few days I will personally ensure that you will become my slave. Sheldon laughed maniacally. Grey wondered if he was completely sane. Sheldon turned to the majority of his army. A few of us will systematically take over the capitals of various countries by holding their leader captive. Then, in real time, the rest of you will get into a flight to Washington to bring our reinforcements. Good luck, boys. And with that, Grey watched helplessly as Sheldon stepped into the time machine with 12 other elite soldiers. Sheldon turned back to the army. In a few minutes, my dream of becoming world emperor will happen. Let the reign of Emperor Philip Swanson begin. The army cheered, and Grey looked down. He had failed. He watched as the time machine disappeared, and the rest of the army raced out of the room. Grey could hear them hopping into hundreds of army jeeps, no doubt headed to the nearest airport. Finally, the room was silent. Grey walked over to the bodies of Jason and Denise. That's when it hit him. He had failed Denise as a husband, and failed Jason as a father. And he had failed to save the earth from a tyrant. The alternate reality Jason had warned him that it might happen to be World War III if Sheldon went too far. And now, it looks like that just might happen. Laurence Grey was just beginning a new round of sorrow when looking at his dead son, when all of a sudden Jason's body disappeared. Grey was frantic and began shoving experiments away in a panicked search for the late Jason. A noise from the back of the room alerted Grey. It was the time machine. As it became visible again, Grey could tell that inside it held General Sheldon and Jason. Grey, tears welling up again in joy, ran to Jason, but stopped when Grey found himself staring down the barrel of a ray gun. Not so fast, Grey. I found out your rather clever plan. Grey was puzzled. Plan? Sheldon sneered. You know what I mean. You let me kill Jason, but we all know how I got here. I came forward in time when I stole Jason's time machine, the Jason from the other reality. So if Jason is killed when he's 14 years old, he won't be alive to go back in time when he's much older, leading to me disappearing. Grey was surprised. He had not worked out that angle. Sheldon must have went back in time a few minutes, nabbed Jason, and brought him to the time frame Grey is in. Sheldon, apparently, was still talking during Grey's reverie. And I won't fall for that again. So, Grey, it's time for you to come to your ultimate decision. Kill your own son, and for that one loss, you'll be rid of me and my entire army, erased from your timeline. Or you can have your son back right now with no harm done. But I promise you, with the time machine in our control, it's only a matter of time before I can become world emperor. The world, or your son. You have 10 seconds to decide. Grey looked and nodded into Jason's eyes. Grey looked and looked into Jason's eyes. He saw a look of determination. Do it, Dad, Jason said grimly. The world needs me way less than it needs its freedom. Grey vigorously shook his head. I won't do it. I can't do it. You're my son. There has to be another way. There is, interrupted Sheldon. You die. That's about it. Other than that, I can't get this right. Other than that, I'd stick with letting me dominate the world if I were you. Gray rattled off a few unmentionable words and said, "I'll never bow to scum like you, Sheldon." General Sheldon smiled. "You will, Gray. You will." Sheldon pressed a button, and the time machine started to shimmer away. Gray whipped out a gun and fired at Sheldon, but the alien ray beam slowed down when it made contact because of the time disturbance. Sheldon just laughed and easily dodged the beam. After a few moments, the time machine completely disappeared. Gray was distraught. What could he do? It seemed to be a no-win situation. Gray wandered over to a nearby TV screen and turned it on. A news lady was standing over in front of the White House, looking very upset. "This reporter is very sad to announce the beginning of a new leadership in the United States. With President Terry presumed dead, the new president is Roanoke Army General Sheldon. A new set of laws will be released tomorrow. Be advised to stay in your homes until everything settles down. Apparently, somehow everything the general is doing is legal. We will update you as the situation develops." Gray shut off the TV. With the Roanoke Army instantly in power because of the time machine, that only made Gray's vulnerability even worse. For the time being, there was only one thing left to do: go into exile. Gray slowly exited Area 51, wondering where to go. He assumed that all law enforcement would be on the lookout for him, per Sheldon's orders. Wait, what? Per Sheldon's orders? What, did I miss something? Oh, okay, never mind. Gray slowly exited Area 51, wondering where to go. He assumed that all law enforcement would be on the lookout for him, per Sheldon's orders. As he passed another TV, his suspicions were proven correct. The news lady was in the middle of saying, "Is wanted. Repeat, President Sheldon asks all of us to find and capture a 35-year-old Caucasian man named Laurence Grey. President Sheldon will pay $10 million to anyone who can retain Grey. Ideally, the state of alive is wanted." Blood drained from Gray's face. He was already out of time. How the heck was he going to find a place to hide in when the entire country was out to get him? But Gray was disrupted from his thoughts when he heard noise from the far end of the room. Gray stepped over a few bodies and made his way to the bodies that seemed to be moving. That's when he realized something was under that. Gray cautiously approached the thing, gun raised. Gray pushed the bodies out of the way to find something he did not ever expect to see again: President Terry. Admittedly, Terry was not in good shape. He had cuts and bruises all over him, and what was most alarming was the missing left arm. "President Terry, what happened?" Terry struggled to stand. "Gray, you're alive. My arm was shot off by a ray gun. What happened to General Farragut and the others?" Gray bowed his head. "They're dead, sir." Terry was silent for a moment. "I see. Well, I guess that makes you the vice president, then." Gray started to protest, but President Terry cut him off. "No buts, Gray. We're at war. We don't have time for an election. Since the Roanoke Army basically wiped out the base, they could be anywhere by now." Gray sighed. "There's more, sir," and showed Terry Sheldon's self-proclaimed presidency and his warrants on Gray. "Apparently, he used the time machine to change the law so that it is now totally legal for him to become president," said Gray. Terry grimaced. "There's law, Gray, and then there's right and wrong, and this is wrong." Gray stood up. "So what are you going to do about it?" Terry shrugged. "I'm technically not president anymore, so I can't do anything. For now, we'll need to stick to your plan of going into exile. We'll lock up this base and wait it out and see what happens. It's our only option with that warrant out on you. I'm sure mine is not far behind." As Gray told Terry about what happened to Jason, he said, "What about my son?" Terry replied, "What about him? Sheldon was right. It's his freedom or the world's." And that is it for chapter 53, guys. Things look grim for Gray and Terry, with Sheldon successfully having taken over the country and perhaps soon the world. What will happen next? Well, I was going to say you can find out tomorrow, but I'm taking off 3 days for Good Friday and Easter. So we're going to go 3 days without a chapter, and you can get the next chapter on Monday, guys, as we almost wrap up this book. So I'll see you Monday, guys, all right? And have a good day.